Welcome everyone. We're gonna show you guys a quick intro and we're gonna get started. So let me see if I could do this right.
Welcome to today's session, everyone.
We are PreMedCC, a student-led organization established in the fall of 2021.
Our goal as an organization was to create an online program for pre-medical students at community colleges and universities, with the hope of guiding the next generation of diverse and inclusive physicians.
And while we advertise our organization as being for community college students, our events are open to anyone.
We realize that finding guidance and mentorship in a pre-med journey can be especially challenging for first-generation pre-med students,
people that lack the financial resources, or just those who do not know people in the medical field.
One of the best parts about our events is that they are virtual, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home.
We typically have events on Fridays from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and on Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 12:30 Pacific Standard Time.
If you aren't able to attend the event, all of our sessions are uploaded on our YouTube channel.
Many of our sessions will end up with a Q&A with the speakers.
Any questions that you have, you may put it in the Q&A session on Zoom, and our team members will read them and have them answer.
After you have attended our event, you can log into our website and complete the quiz, which will contain questions pertaining to our session today.
If you score 70% or higher on the quiz, you will be awarded a certificate to show that you attended our session today.
If you want to stay connected with the upcoming events or just want to tell your pre-med friends about the PreMedCC, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok as @PreMedCC.
All right, welcome everyone. I'm going to introduce our speaker today, and I'm sorry, my friend, if I butcher your name. Is it Agasia? Awesome. All right, everyone. So today we have with us Agasia Lanier. She's an admissions counselor and recruitment coordinator with Kaiser Permanente Bernard J. Tyson School of Medicine. In these roles, or in her many roles, Agasia guides and counsels prospective pre-medical school applicants through the admissions process and is responsible for creating the admissions recruitment strategy. So some good advice from our friend here. She's also the staff advisor for the admissions ambassadors, a group of current students who participate in various activities with the Office of Admissions. Prior to joining at Kaiser, Agasia worked as the assistant director for nursing and transfer admissions at Mount St. Mary's in Los Angeles. In this role, Agasia guided and counseled prospective nursing applicants through the admissions process. She also supervised a small team of transfer admission counselors. Agasia graduated from Mount St. Mary's University in LA with a Bachelor's of Arts in Business Administration with an emphasis in management. She also holds a Master's of Education in Higher Education from Abilene Christian University, located in Abilene, Texas. Agasia also earned a Master's of Science in Counseling Psychology at MSMU. So we have a counseling and admissions master in our midst here. We're very lucky.
Good morning, everyone. I always crack up when I hear my own bio, like, wow, I really did all that. It's amazing to me sometimes, but yeah, I think I just had two lows when it came to my interest in my career, and they both just happened to be in admissions and advising, but I didn't want to go too far back, further than that, and some other things that I've done. I have actually been an academic advisor as well for pre-health students, which is probably why I'm here today. It was a long time ago for me, but I still have that hat every now and then that I take out and put on for students, especially ones that, approach me and say, I'm just having a hard time reaching people. So I think that's what this is for today. But yeah, used to work for CSU, Long Beach State to be specific. And that was something that started my higher education career and what I fell in love with. And then I transitioned into admissions. But yeah, I'm really happy to be here with everyone. I want to thank PreMedCC for inviting me to chat with you. I'm really just a person who just loves to chat and talking and give advice. So yeah, I do have a presentation, but I'm really looking forward to just connecting and hearing from you and hearing what you want to talk about and hopefully answer your questions. So yeah, I'll go ahead and get started. And I didn't know you had a quiz after this, so I'll be really nice. that was new to me, but I promise it won't be too bad there. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. And thank you for joining on a Saturday morning. I know you could be doing anything else than this. So that shows me that you really are, interested in hopefully doing something better for the world, in the world of maybe medicine, maybe who knows where you're going with that, but free health. Okay. So I was asked to connect with, students in regards to how to find, interact, and utilize your pre-health advisor. Um, a pre-health advisor is someone who is definitely, think of them as a mentor, somebody that could definitely be there to guide you through the application process, and lots more. So I'm hoping that you already know this, but if you don't, or maybe just some other things that they can do, I'm hoping I could share a little bit more information into that. And just starting off of where I'm going with this as far as my presentation goes, I'm definitely going to talk about the pre-health, pre-medical advisor role, how to find an advisor if you have not been able to do that already, partnering with your advisor. I want to hear about your experiences, and then maybe we can chat about that as well. And then Q&A, definitely want to leave plenty of time to answer any questions. So that is where we are going with that. I want to send a shout out to anyone who is here because they are probably a current applicant for Kaiser Permanente Bernard J Tyson School of Medicine. And I know you might ask me some admission questions. I'm okay with that. However, I do want to say there will be another presentation for on this coming up actually on March 24th, that we will be talking all things KPSOM with my boss, Dr. Lindia Willis-Jacobo. So if you're interested in the school of Kaiser Permanente School of Medicine, you're more than welcome to join us that evening at 5 o'clock. And you'll see me and my boss, Dr. Lindia Willis-Jacobo, will be happy to answer questions there too. Okay. So jumping right in head first, pre-health, pre-med advisor, what is their role? What do they do? What are they supposed to do? And I mentioned earlier, they're there to guide you through your pre-health, pre-medical school journey. There's so many things that you need to think about in regards to applying for any, school. You have to think about the application process. You have to think about the prerequisites. You may be required to submit letters of recommendations. You might have activities that you need to attend to and describe. There's so many things. And of course, there's always going to be essays, whether it's personal statements or secondary questions. These are things that your advisors can help you, give you advice, but ultimately, you think of as your partner. They're not there to just say, do this and you keep going. It's going to take both of you, to come into this process open-minded, and they share, ideas, and you decide on what is the best path for you. So I want to be clear on that. A lot of students have come to me over the years and said, just tell me what to do. And I'm like, okay, well, I can do that, but this is a two-way street. I want to know what you want to do. And we come up with ways to make it, things successful for you. So that's what I wanted to say there. I know I've always wanted to say that to students. So going with that, they are your resource experts. Your advisors are in connections to many professional societies. They are in connection with many other pre-health advisors, many admission counselors and representatives from different schools. They know things that you may not know. So they are a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of resource. And these are the people that you go to if you're like having questions other than the direct source itself. I always tell a student, when in doubt, if you're questioning something, there's nothing wrong with going straight to the source. Actually, I highly recommend it. Sometimes, talking with your friends or talking with other people in the process, not everybody will have the same information or the right information. So when in doubt, always go straight to the source. But one of those sources I always would say would be an advisor. And they're your network connectors. Again, just the same thing as going in the same vein of your resources. They know a lot of people. This may be somebody, if you're saying, I really need to figure out who to connect with as far as where do I get my recommenders? How do I get my recommenders? I'm looking for a volunteer opportunity or just any kind of activity that you want to be involved in. They may have those connections to connect you with those people. Maybe you want to connect with a physician, and you're not sure if you want to go into a particular specialty or not. They may have connections to alumni from your school that you never knew about. And that is something that you have to ask first. It's not always out there for that information, but they are your network connectors. So those are the top three, I would say, as roles of what your advisor would do. But of course, we could definitely discuss any other things that they should be doing. But I wanted to point out those three. Now, a lot of people will say, how do I find an advisor? And I hope you have at this point, especially if you're well into the journey of, applying to wherever you're applying to. But if not, there's plenty of places where you can find an advisor. And it's not always where you think it is. Sometimes we do, as schools, we do have advising offices. We may have pre-health or pre-medical advising offices. That just depends on the school. Depending on how large or small the school is, you may end up finding an advisor in different locations. So I just wanted to list all of those possible locations. That way you can be a little bit mindful of that, especially if you're looking now. Sometimes, you may find an advisor within your academic dean's office. And I'm thinking of one school in particular, but through the academic dean's office, they may actually have an offshoot of, advisors that work through that particular office. So you may want to check there. Your science professors may also be considered a pre-med or a pre-health advisor. So depending on what, program you're thinking about, you may want to check with some of your science professors. They actually might be a faculty advisor for the school. Career services. If you don't have like a standing pre-health or pre-medical program, most likely you're going to find a counselor that is dedicated to students who are interested in pre-health or pre-medical in career services. So you are always welcome to connect with your career service offices. Once you graduate, that's part of, your tuition, where your money went to your career services. As alumni, you have that right to go back and say, hey, I want to connect with a counselor in my office. I have, this goal and this is what I'm striving for. You can always work with a career services advisor or a career counselor. Professional advising offices. Again, this depends on the school. They might already have a pre-professional advising office. So you would look for an advisor there. You may already be assigned one, depending on the school as well. Now, this one, post-baccalaureate programs, is more for if you've been out of school, for a couple of years, you may not have access to go back to, the pre-advising offices or even career services, depending on the school again. Sometimes you are able to find counselors and advisors within your post-baccalaureate programs. And actually, I would probably say that's one of the biggest things that I love about post-baccalaureate programs is that you do have a dedicated advisor that's there to guide you through the process. And then again, this is more for, anyone. If you do not have that resource at your school and you find that there is no one there, of course, try to look first. There are always resources where you can go to the National Association of Advisors for Health Professions, for the health professions, and they have a really great service. One, they will ask you to look up your school and see if there is an advisor available for you. And if not, you actually can connect with one of their advisors. They do have advisors that do assist students that don't have advisors. So that is another place to go. And actually, this is the biggest place I will send a student, anyone who's asking about anything pertaining to pre-health or pre-med. This is one of the websites that I prefer. So I hope in the chat, maybe that link is there. Thank you. So I will always, anything that I'm saying right now is most likely coming from this particular organization or AAMC, which we'll talk about in a moment. Now, getting into partnering with your advisors, me personally, and this is again based on my opinion, I think one of the biggest things when you want to connect with your advisors, you need to establish a connection with your advisor. This is ideal. They need to get to know who you are. You have to tell them what your goals are, what are your objectives, you know, what are your interests? Are you a parent, you know, that is thinking about going through this process? That's important. You need to discuss those things. You need to make sure that you have a good connection with your advisor. I would never want anyone to continue something and they're not happy with this particular person. Maybe the personalities don't mix, and that's a possibility, but definitely you want to have a connection with your advisor so they can help you and vouch for you if they have to on your behalf. Sometimes they may even be a recommender for you. This is big for me. I feel like, you know, if you are really interested in something, I'd like to think that you're throwing yourself in head first, you know, and try to soak up all the information that you could get from a possible program. So there is nothing wrong with signing up to receive email announcements of different events. You know, you never know who you might come across. Just like with PreMedCC, you probably signed up for this event to make connections and to get ideas. And PreMedCC is amazing, by the way. I've been through their website, and you guys have a lot of resources within this website alone. So just sign up for events. This is the best way that you're going to get the most answers for you. Also discuss, you know, partnering your advisors, they're really to help you with discussing your prerequisites, recommend courses and your academic plans. This is key, you know, even starting off in freshman year. You know, maybe this came along a little bit later, but if you are first starting out, that's the thing. You want to actually sit down and plan out every single year that you are, you know, in school. You don't want to miss prerequisites. There is nothing worse than applying for something and then finding out you're missing a requirement or more. And it puts time, you know, on you. And I know that's undue time. Now, I also tell people to do your due diligence. I don't say that everybody is not going to be a great advisor. And I hate to say that, but it is what it is. I think that's key. I think that's something that happens in every job. But I also want you to be mindful of what your requirements are and what you are supposed to be taking. Again, an advisor is really there to guide you, but not to tell you exactly what to do. So it's okay to say, hey, you know, I'm not so sure about this. What do you think? And then you can still take their consideration or their opinion in consideration, but ultimately the choices are yours. And you should always remember that. But yes, thinking about your prereqs, thinking about when you're taking courses, when you're planning on applying, when you're planning on taking certain exams, for example, like maybe the MCAT, you know, and if you're juggling more than one application, which I know most of you are, there's nothing wrong with getting information on each and every school that you're thinking about, because they could have different requirements, different, you know, experiences and things that you may need to know about. If you're still in school right now, I always recommend meeting with your advisor at least once a semester, if possible. I know, you know, depending on the school, that may be a little more impossible. Maybe there might be only one advisor for 500 students. I hope that's not the case, but that is a possibility. So if you can, try to meet with them at least once a semester, definitely once a year if at best, but you want to keep checking in. You know, this connecting with an advisor is not a one-time thing, and it shouldn't be. This is an ongoing relationship, therefore establishing connection, going back to the first point there. But I hope that you're meeting with them on a regular basis. So I'm big, like I said, I really don't like presenting it, to be honest. I really want to just have an honest chat and hear from all of you. So I just want, if somebody's willing to volunteer, 2 or 3 people, I want to know what your experiences have been like, in regards to advisors or academic advising, and maybe we can jump into questions from there, but I'm going to stop sharing here. So please, in the chat, I really would love to hear about some of your experiences. Or do we have the capability to unmute and let them speak? I don't know.
We can't do the unmute just because of how the system is set up.
Oh, gotcha.
But they could put it in the chat or in the Q&A.
That'd be awesome. Thank you. So in the chat or in QA, please share your experiences.
You could do it anonymously in the Q&A.
Yes, you can.
If you feel more comfortable, you could put it anonymously in the Q&A. And
of course, we'll give you some time. I know that you might be typing a lot there. So, and if you have questions, this is a good time to ask questions too. I just want to kind of jump right in head first with this and give you as much time to talk.
I know we haven't had any questions typed out yet, but I know from previous events, we've had a lot of people speak about having negative interactions with advisors who have either put them down or discouraged them. Do you have any thoughts on when that happens and how people can deal with it?
I have plenty of thoughts on that. It hurts. It hurts my heart to hear, there are people that will put a student down. Personally, I would never tell anyone that they are not, that's not your thing, or you should not do anything. I think you should be able to do whatever you want. With that said, I want to also, speak from an advisor mind and say, sometimes we see things. We get to see your academic records, and we get to hear from you, and we're getting to know you. So we make recommendations. Some people are a little less tactful than others. I will say that. But based on what we see, we may say, okay, yes, this is one option. Let's see how is this option going for you? And we'll speak from there. But I never would want anybody to stick around and connect with someone who basically just said, this is not for you. If that's the case, then I recommend trying somewhere else. And don't give up on, your hopes. If it keeps happening, then yes, we need to dig a little bit deeper on why things keep happening. But I would never want anybody to endure that situation. So there's nothing wrong. And what I'm saying about advisors is, if an advisor is one person in the process, you're going to have multiple people that should be helping you with the process, multiple resources, multiple avenues. I guess you can consider me one, for example, but there are so many different people that you can come across that will help you along your journey, where you don't have to necessarily depend on one. So I know that's kind of like part pep talk, but part advice is you shouldn't have to depend on just one person's opinion. I think that's where I want to go with that. Do we have something?
That's something else I feel like a lot of people, maybe think about and aren't so keen as to asking is, when they come to meet an advisor, they seem so busy and they're trying to get their name and their foot in the door. And your perspective as being the advisor and having students, come in that revolving door, what's the best thing a student to do? Is it to come prepared? What on your end helps you to help them more?
Exactly, come prepared. yes, there are going to be times where you see it is a revolving door. And like I mentioned, coming from a large institution where I used to work, there probably literally was about 500 students to one advisor. But the people that were very successful in their journeys were the people that I saw the most. Like I said, there was nothing wrong with somebody, connecting and seeing me once a semester, maybe more, depending on what is happening with that particular person. But it's really just a matter of understanding, you have to come prepared too. Coming in and just saying, okay, what do I do? Okay, what do you do with what? You got to give me a little bit more than that. So I always appreciated the student that came in and said, hey, I want to be a doctor. And I have the following schools that I'm interested in. And these are the 5 schools that I'm interested in. And I'll say, yes, let's take that. Let's look up each one of these schools. We'll look up the requirements. And then that's when we start putting a plan together. So you have to give me a little bit in order to get the information that you're looking for. Because we're not mind readers. I mean, we try, but we can't do everything.
Along the kind of same line of questioning there. So you've been an academic, you've been a PreHealth Advisor, and now, of course, you're actually, working at Bernard J. Tyson School of Medicine. So what have you noticed in your students now that are medical students? Anything that they wish they knew before, or common pitfalls? They're like, oh man, I wish I should have or could have.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Seeing it from the other side, I think that was the best part of like flipping into admissions from that side. Definitely, not leaving things to chance. And I think that's one thing I would say, never just apply and just set it and forget it. The application process is not a set and forget kind of thing. That's something you need to stay on top of. There are so many people that will tell me, I'm thinking of admissions right now, and they'll receive a decision. And I'll say this now for like our current cycle in a couple of weeks, and go, oh my goodness, I didn't even know that I was considered incomplete. Well, how? How did you not? No, did you follow up? Did you not check? Many schools have application portals that you can check 24/7. When someone emails me, the day of a deadline and says, I forgot about the deadline and now they're rushing through. Of course, that's never too successful. Don't do that. Don't be that student. But there's things in place that are there to help you. And most of the time when you're applying, you're going to get a confirmation that you submitted, an application, or your file is complete. Every school should give you a confirmation that your file is complete. If you didn't get that confirmation, you need to follow up. There are very few schools that will say, hey, by the way, we're not one of them, by the way, but people may give you a reminder and say that, hey, you're incomplete. If you get that reminder email, by the way, that means you're incomplete. Follow up. But that's something that I'm like, oh my gosh, why are you calling now? So those are things I see on that side. What else? People who start the process early are the successful ones. Let's just be real. If you treat the application process as an afterthought, then that's kind of what you're going to get. You give the energy, and that's the energy you might receive, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it rings true for a lot of people who are like, okay, yeah, definitely.
I hope I'm not making anybody feel kind of weird, but no, you give the energy you want to get back. If you're all in and you're on top of it and you're I'm not saying email them every single day. Don't do that. But there's nothing wrong with asking questions. If you legit have a question, there are, places that you can go. You can go to the school's website. You can go, and sign up for different events. A lot of schools have virtual events that you can sign up for and connect with someone, a representative. Ask those questions. You can even go to those schools, social media pages. I can tell you that because I know I work directly with our social media person, and she will ask me an admission question, and I'm the one answering that, by the way. It's a heads up. So now behind the scenes, but there's so many different ways to get your questions answered. And I'm not going to knock particular websites. You probably know where I'm going with this, but there's these websites that a lot of students will go to, and I love it because it means that you have other people that are going through the same experiences as you are. But don't get all your information from those websites because you're all kind of like feeding into fear. And 9 times out of 10, most of the people that seem to be on those websites that are complaining about something, probably, they had a bad experience and now they're just sharing and kind of want you to join in that misery. But like, again, if you have a legit question, go straight to the source.
Yeah, the issue with social media and all of these websites is people are keyboard warriors. They are very pious and everything, but they're not like people that are doing things are too busy to sit down and knock something down. And so I would say take everything with a grain of salt. Websites are really good, like for example, if you're applying to Kaiser, probably should read their mission statement and know what they're looking for. They're not secretive about it. There's no secret. And I think every time we have a dean of admission, people always ask about the secret and I call it the secret sauce, but
yeah,
they will exactly tell you everything that they're looking for, and also requirements. Can you actually talk about when you say something is recommended versus required, and how people should address that?
Of course. You're exactly right in regards to, when someone asks that question, what's the secret or what's going to make me that competitive applicant? I get that question all the time. And so do many other reps and deans, and we're not hiding it. Most of the time, and everybody knows this about me, if you've been in a space with me, I'm going to always tell you, go read the mission and vision of that school. It may sound a little bit of the same, but it may not be, depending on that school. If that's going to tell you whether that school is more research-based, or what their true mission is. I'm thinking of my school in general. We want to be a school where we're hoping to put out more diverse, physicians into, the world. So like, it just depends on what they're looking for, because for us, when we're in the admission committee space, the first thing a committee member is saying, okay, now how do they fit with us in our mission and vision? Bottom line. And if they can't find that, then they're going to move on to the next student, or applicant that does fit that mission and vision. So you got to think about that when you're applying to your different schools. Going back to prereqs and recommended courses. Prerequisites these are the courses that you have to have in order to start this particular, institution. So it is very important to know what those prereqs are. And some schools may be the same and some schools may be different. Me personally, and maybe this is how I was as a student, when I was applying to grad school, I listed out all the schools that I was interested in. I put in all their deadline dates, and I had prereqs for every single school. And then I made notes on, okay, maybe I like I said, I'm kind of type A, but you might have to be sometimes, or pretend to be. I actually highlighted and color coded the prereqs that were similar. So I was like, okay, for this school, I know I need chemistry. So maybe 5 out of the 10 schools, I will need chemistry. This is an example, by the way. You want to make note of that. And like I said, there's nothing worse than going through the entire process and realizing that you don't have the requirements. And there are schools that will say you can't start. They will, I've seen schools actually rescind admissions. This is like, to the extreme, but it's a possibility. You may not start on time if you don't have the right requirements. So it's good to get that out of the way and do that early and make sure you have those requirements before you get to that point. A lot of times we will go through the entire process and we're not really looking at prereqs right away. We're hoping you already know our prereqs. And by the time, let's say you go through the entire interview process now, and we admit you. Now, that's for me as a counselor, I'm actually checking then. There are times that I've reached out to people and say, hey, where's your your humanities course. I never want that. That's the most toughest, conversation to tell somebody, oh, by the way, you need to go take a course and it needs to be done by July 1st. And it's like March, so there's that. Recommended courses. These are courses that are just designed to, possibly help you either with an exam. So for example, maybe the MCAT, or maybe these are courses that are just recommended for you to have to be considered competitive. So look at those recommended courses very closely. A lot of schools might say recommended courses may be a foreign language. That could give you an edge over someone else versus someone who doesn't have that. So it just depends on the school. I hope that helped there.
Definitely. And we have a question actually in the chat that I think kind of ties into what you're speaking about.
Look at that. Is this for Nicole?
I was looking at Bella's question or experience actually, and she speaks a little bit about some of the courses that she's taken don't really transfer over to her current university.
Oh.
So I think she was wanting to know, will being a transfer student have an impact on the application? And then how does this work, having these courses that you take at a community college that don't necessarily transfer over to a university, and how that impacts medical school admissions?
A lot. And thank you for that question. That this is what I was looking for. I want to hear those experiences because I can, kind of speak to this. Depending on the school where you completed those initial courses, that is one of the biggest reasons why you need to connect with your counselor your advisor when you do get to your four-year institution, for example. Sometimes you will realize that some of the courses that you took may not be equivalent to what other schools are looking for. And that could be disheartening, but I'd rather that right away than, going through and then getting to a point where you're starting to apply for schools and not understanding that situation. It really does depend on the schools that you're transferring to, but sometimes that also comes with, do I want to transfer to that school? If I'm going to lose all of that, you can actually speak to schools ahead of time before you make those experiences, because that could be, delay you down the road. So this is why it's okay to start the process early. I mean, hey, if we're talking about freshman year, we're talking about freshman year. If you already know you're going to start at a community college, you actually have to be mindful of where are you going after community college right from the start sometimes. But
yeah, and I put this website, the California Community College. If you go into California Community College and you're transferring, assist.org is like the most important.
Thank you for mentioning it. That was my life. I lived and breathed assist.org as an advisor.
Because
so I would always go there. That you should be living by that too.
Yeah, like I've had this happen to me. Was I'm looking at a couple of different majors, and one of my counselors like, well, you need to take this class. And I'm like, no, actually, according to assist.org, it says this. And it's kind of like assist.org is a contract that's made between the schools. So they have to honor it. So it's not like something that it's not someone's like suggestion or it's like basically if, for example, UC Berkeley would tell you that if you want to do this major, you need to have these classes or they won't let you in. Like it's into that major. And so it's a contractual thing. So make sure you look at that website and, a lot of counselors also, all counselors use that website because there's like 7 million majors and something like 200 schools between, there's something close to, I think 50 CSUs and UCs. And so they don't know every single major and every single school. So look that up yourself, print it out or have it on your phone, and then just look at it and see, because they can make mistakes, like they're human. And so make sure that if you're going from a community college to a CSU or UC, make sure you have that.
Definite great advice. Something I would tell anyone too. I'm looking at a couple of these messages.
Actually, there was one that didn't want to let fly by. I thought it was really good. What can students who are in a gap year do to find an advisor? Someone who's maybe not doing post-bac, they're just like picking up this, odd and end class at a JC, getting ready. What do you recommend?
So students in a gap year, this is where I was mentioning, sometimes you might have been away from school for, a little bit of time. But this is not the time to slack off and utilize those career services there. You're an alumni now. You can go back and ask questions, and that's where career services will come in. If they don't have someone on staff that is, directly there for pre-health, graduates, they know people in the school space that will connect you. So I would say utilize those alumni services, like they're there for you. I don't think people use it enough. And not just for just counseling. They have a ton of things that they do with students. Most likely you will find a lot of your events where you're connecting directly with a person like me. Like right now, I can tell you right now, my calendar is full of career service advisors that I'll be connecting with in the next couple of weeks because they want me to go to their school. So they have direct connections to those representatives that you're trying to get in touch with and hopefully get into those schools. But yeah, start there. And then of course, for gap years, I know sometimes people take gap years and you're focusing on maybe you're a career changer. And I'm going to say the differences between post-bac programs. Post-bac programs either are for career changers. There's some programs for that. And then there's post-bac programs that are enhancers, grade enhancers. So maybe you were a psych major. You got a degree in psychology. So you may not have all the prereqs, in your program because you weren't following that track, but now you're interested in pre-med. I would look for a program like that because, those programs are going to include taking courses that you're going to need for some of those prerequisites that you're looking at for other schools. With that said, along with those prereqs that you're taking in that program, you're going to get a built-in advisor in that program. And that's the best thing for a lot of people because, like I said, you've been away from school. Same thing with those enhancer programs. They know who you are, who you came in as, and that you're increasing. That's the whole point. You're trying to increase your GPA. So again, built-in advisors who now know where you started and where you're going and where you ended up so they can vouch for you. These are great resources to have. But I always look at post-bac programs during a gap year and then look at your mentors. I hope you're doing something during your gap years because that's what, an admission committee member is looking at, like, well, what took place during your gap year. If you're volunteering, if you're scribing, if you're whatever you're doing, during your gap years, you want to make sure that you're connecting with people and hopefully getting mentored. And if there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I really am interested in what you do, can I just sit down and just have a cup of coffee with you? Just pick your brain. There's nothing wrong with asking that. A lot of people will be happy to chat with you about what they do. And you never know. You may figure out maybe that's not the path you want to go, or maybe this is the path that you're on. But either way, you need to be collecting mentors and people that you can network with that hopefully maybe will be a future recommender or just to guide you through that journey. Maybe this is something very new to you. Maybe you're first gen and this is your first time going through anything of this experience, and that could be scary, but there's nothing wrong with asking somebody who's been through that process to help you out.
We have an experience in the Q&A that I think is pretty powerful. I'm going to read it out loud.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Sometimes it feels like I don't need an advisor because I know the requirements of medical school. So why should I take up someone's time having them advise me? However, coming from a family that does not have anyone in the medical field, sometimes I feel unsure about myself. What are some questions students tend to forget or overlook when they ask for advice? And then also even if you know the requirements for medical school, is there something an advisor can give you beyond that, especially being the first in your family to go to medical?
Yes, like I said, you never know. You might come across that advisor who was probably first gen themselves. So now you have a person who is going through the same thing that you're going through. And that's okay. I can be honest and tell you, I'm not first gen, but I there are people that I will go to that I've never been through this experience before. So I will count on them to say, hey, well, talk me through this. There's nothing wrong with that. And again, as an advisor, first of all, you're my dream student because you know the requirements. Thank you for doing your due diligence first. But an advisor is more than just talking about requirements. They're the person that's going to say, okay, do you remember about these upcoming dates? They might know something about MCAT scores. A lot of your advisors are connected to professional societies. For example, AAMC, which is, the organization that pretty much all of our pre-health advisors and admission counselors belong to, and where we get our information from, especially in regards to the application, big information. They may know things that you don't know. Maybe there's a delay in the uploading of transcripts. That's happened, by the way. You would never know what's going on. Your advisor probably can say, oh, by the way, you might want to get this in time, or, a couple of weeks in advance because there's an issue there. Or, hey, I heard that there's an MCAT program that's free. By the way, take advantage of that if you hear that. But they may know things that you don't know because they're tapped in to a network of people that do this for a living. We live, eat, sleep, and breathe admissions, or advising students. You should utilize us for that. Never feel like you're wasting any of our time because that's what we get paid to do.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to add is you pay a pretty penny for your education. So don't ever feel bad. Certainly if they're paid staff person at your university or community college, they get paid to be there and that's their job. So don't ever feel bad that you're taking up their time. Like they're there for you. But also the bigger part of it too is realizing that it's okay to ask for help, and it's not a sign of weakness or that you are a weak person or that you're not somebody. It's always good to check for someone else because just kind of like when you write an essay, it's really good for somebody to edit it for you because you will miss things. I know I do. Whenever I write something, I have to, have somebody else take a look at it, something that's important. So yeah, so make sure you do that, and like don't feel like you're wasting their time, because if you don't show up, their job's not going to be there. So that's the same thing too.
You're right. I actually said this to a student before, that was getting kind of frustrated with the process, and I was just real. In that moment, I had to apologize, but I was just like, look, I've already done my education. Like, this is you. What do you want to do? At the end of the day, I can't do it for you. So I'm here, to figure out, help you, guide you through this process. Utilize me, because at the end of the day, I'm still going to be here. I want you to be here, and I want you to be successful. And I really wish, for the most part, I will say about 98% of the people that you're going to come across, we do this because we love it. And hopefully you will get those people that genuinely care about, your success and what you're doing. Like I said, now, if you do run across that person that you don't get that impression, it's okay to move on and find someone else. But for the most part, you're going to run into someone who really does genuinely care about your successes. We have plenty of time, so I know we can probably get to all of these experiences here. Looking in the Q&A here. Do you have advice on whether to take a gap year between college and medical school, and what is the best time to do extracurriculars as a full-time student? The balance of the full-time student, and I'm guessing you're probably working, because let's just be real. I don't know too many people that can't work, that that have that luxury of not working and going to school. But if you are working and you're a full-time student, that's a lot. And you do have to take in consideration of whether you can or cannot do activities. Now, the beauty of certain schools, when they tell you that they have holistic review, that's something that I love for a school, because that means they take that in consideration. We know that many students are working. We know that many students are probably taking on a full load. And maybe you didn't get to do all those experiences that some other students did. Maybe you're a non-traditional student. Maybe you're a parent. You know, there could be lots of reasons why you couldn't do certain things. So if you are deciding to take a gap year, that could be one of those reasons. You know, you finished school and then you said, now I can focus on other things that I want to be able to focus on. That could be a reason. And there's nothing wrong with that. Taking a gap year could just be you just needed to be in a better mental space to go through the process. This process is not for the faint at heart. You know, sometimes you just need to be in a different mental space to go through the process. So there's nothing wrong with taking some time off for that. Anything that you're doing during that time frame is most likely going to be used to figure out whether or not, you know, you're trying to figure out a specialty, or if you're trying to figure out this is for you, or just getting more experience. I think it's all going to be very helpful for you. That's where a lot of people will look to your skills and how well you were able to navigate your experiences. We do take that into account too. So if you were mature enough to say, hey, I couldn't do everything in school like that, but now that I'm out of school, I am going to take some time and focus on other things that I wanted to focus on. We appreciate that. You didn't try to pile everything in all at once and then maybe not come out with the ideal grades that you wanted.
We have a question specifically about prereqs in the Q&A. Somebody was asking, what does a biology prereq mean? And could this mean a year sequence of anatomy and physiology, microbiology, et cetera? Or does this solely mean a sequence of cellular/molecular biology?
It could be both. And that depends on the school. Sometimes, depending on the school, you could have, you may be required to complete a particular math course before you go into that science. So you always have to double check the prerequisites for any required science because you never know. And that's the other reason why you would want to connect with an advisor. You may not know the sequence for that school. Certain schools have different sequences. You know, let's just kind of use an example. You definitely may not be able to take, you know, biology C before taking biology A, for obvious reasons. But you know, you have to know what those sequences are, and it's okay if you don't know them outright. Guess who knows them? Your advisor. I was the advisor that literally knew the catalog. I was literally called the walking catalog because that was my job. I had to know what was required. If you told me that you were planning on taking a certain major or you were trying to get in a major, I know there's a lot of pre-majors out there. I knew all those requirements for you to get into those pre-majors. So yeah, you got to look at if it's a prereq, does the prereq have a prereq to that? Is there a co-requisite? Maybe you have to be in a course at the same time as this prereq. There's a lot of things to keep track of, and that's what we help you with. Because computers are helpful and they tell us what to do.
Yeah, but the other thing is also advisors, this is something that's not on a website. It's posted. They have experience from other students that have gone through it. So they may say, hey, you know, I know that some students that go through this class, they say that this is like really, like this is a challenging part, or they may have like so this is one example. Calculus 2 is a very difficult class and there's a lot of trigonometry. Some people try to take Calculus 2 without any trigonometry, and it's a really struggle. So people, you know, so people that start on the sequence, you tell them, hey, you know what, you should take a trig class before that. Same thing with like biology. A lot of people want to take biology without any chemistry. Some schools don't even let you do that. But the beginning of biology, you go over a lot of bonding and water and all this different stuff, which that's pretty much like 3 weeks of general chemistry in college, and they're not going to explain that to you in the biology course, and you're going to get lost because you're not going to know the difference between polar covalent bond, non-polar covalent bond, any of that stuff. And so some people may try. I mean, an advisor would say, you know, you could probably do it, but this is what I've heard from another student, and probably, you know, should take that class before that. They may actually stop you from making a mistake. That's going to delay you. You're going to pay all these fees. You're not going to do well in that class. And then so that's why you're not really bothering them. They have these wisdoms from, I say they have this wisdom from their gray hairs, but some of them don't. But they have this background information that's not listed anywhere. So, and certainly if you're new to a school or new to a college or university that you don't know anyone, they can be a great resource to you to stop you from making a mistake. But ultimately, it's your choice.
Correct. And in that same vein, I was also going to add, advisors know your professors. So we probably know who are the really hard professors, or the more difficult ones, or the more personality challenged ones. I'll just be nice about that. So we know your professors. And judging by some of my students, I may know which professors might be a better fit for my students. I might make a recommendation of, hey, I think maybe this class might be better for you, versus this class. So that's another thing that your advisor is there for. We know your professors probably very well. We probably, go bowling with them and do things too, but we know them in the academic realm and what students, tend to thrive in certain classes. So that's the other thing that you are kind of connecting with your advisor on, to gain that experience as well. We're not going to advertise that, so you have to ask us about that.
And same thing with Rate My Professor, just like any other website. I know that a lot of people use that. I always say Rate My Professor is for pissed off students that didn't do well and want the vet. And so that's, taking it with a grain of salt again, it's just know that as well, that advisors know certain things that's not posted.
You're right. And being somebody who's been, I've seen Rate My Professor from both perspectives, as a student and as a professor myself, part-time faculty. Luckily for me, I guess my students like me, so I was on the positive end of that. But I've heard, other students are avoiding people due to Rate My Professor. Again, remember, this is student driven, and sometimes the people that tend to speak up the loudest may not be the ones that were happiest about that course. Again, this is where your advisor could come into play there, because they don't have an agenda for that. So you might hear the same thing, you may not hear the same thing, but I would always like I said, go straight to the source, not necessarily to your website. I'm looking at the chat. Did we cover Nicole's pre-nursing major? I've had lovely experiences with pre-nursing students over my years. Hoping
we
to be
another question in the Q&A.
In the Q&A about nursing too?
Or a little bit different. How can I stand out in my clinical experiences when thousands of applicants are also doing similar clinical jobs like medical assistant, scribe, EMT, etc.? Do you have any advice for that?
Standing out in your clinical experiences, I would say definitely don't go into a clinical experience, just to the point of checking off a box. I'm not saying that, you won't need it, because depending on the programs that you're applying to, you will. But I would definitely look at, clinical experiences that are of interest to you. If this is, you're like, hey, I really wanted to learn more about pediatrics, OBGYN, and maybe there are some programs that let you, dive right into those experiences. You can tell from your experiences, you're passionate about something, because one, you're probably going to show up to it more often than not. We're going to see way more hours that you spent in that particular setting versus, 10 hours. And there is a big difference between seeing somebody with 10 hours of experience versus 200 hours of experience. To me, that tells me that you were really, really interested in what you were doing. And it wasn't just about, again, checking the boxes, which is not how you want to appear. You want to try to get as much experience. And also, for me, I would take a journal and keep a journal. And the reason why I would keep a journal is because guess what? We're going to ask you in the application, so what was that experience about? Tell us about it. Now you have a journal where you can go back through your pages and you can talk about specific, people that you came across, what you learned from a particular case. We want to hear that versus this is the experience and this is what I did. No, I want to know why you did that. Why did you choose the experience in the first place? That's what we need to answer. So you also have to go into it with where you're going to take some reflections away from that. And that's what I would hope that you're doing during that experience. You are a sponge in that space, and you are there to just collect as much experience as you can and utilize that to your advantage.
Yeah, the only thing is that I would just add on is like I have a job in clinical, I work in the ER, but if you ask me that if a certain medical school wants you to go get a job working at a clinic or OBGYN or anything like that, I probably would like not get in anywhere because that's not something I'm really interested. I'm actually scared of pregnant patients, but that's just me. But yeah, that's not something that I would enjoy, and that's not something that's really interesting to me. So you don't want to do something you don't enjoy. Like they don't have like they just want you to be out there and have some idea of what you do in medicine, but not certain one thing. The other part of it too is if you're working somewhere for 6 months or a year, what have you progressed? Are you taking leadership roles? Are you orienting other people? Are you taking on responsibilities? And those are really important to stand out because you could just show up to a job and check in and check out, but if you're taking, if you want awards, like every year like in our department, we get like every nurse, physician, tech, and even unit assistant gets reward, like voted by other people. Those are all really important things that you could always put on your resume and your application. So don't look at it just like, oh, I'm just going to do this experience and everybody, and working, in one clinic is a totally different experience, than somebody else working at a different clinic. So
Correct.
We have another question in the Q&A that I think is a pretty good one. It's about somebody's specific experience. They're saying, hello, I'm a nurse with 20 years experience and want to go to medical school. I have my BSN already and want to take my prereqs at my community college. Is this a good start since I have not been in school for 17 years? And where do I do my upper GEs? Thank you.
So I love my people going back to school. Yes, it is a good start to go to a community college, first of all, for various reasons, but the biggest one in my mind would be cost and accessibility. So I love, the community colleges, and there are some that are just directly keyed into the post-bac experience. I'm thinking of a few in Southern California, for example. Mount SAC is like one of those schools that I know has a really large post-bac population. But yes, community college is a great place to go back and get your prereqs. One other thing I want to say about prereqs is check in with the different schools that you're interested in and find out if they have time limit requirements. You may be experiencing, or you may remember this, especially from, nursing school. Nursing admissions sometimes has some time limits on your prereqs, and depending on the school, they may have some time limits. So you also want to check that and keep that in mind when you're looking at prereqs. Also, as far as your upper division courses, you may not need to do upper division courses unless it's specific. If that's the case, there are other nonprofit schools out there where you can go and get upper division coursework done, and sometimes even through UCs. A lot of UCs have extension programs where you can connect and be able to do coursework that's above, in other words, like 100, 200 level, which is considered like junior college level. So I would probably look to extension services, usually like UC. I know UCLA is really big on extension, so is Irvine, Berkeley, a couple other schools.
there's also a law that passed about 15 years ago that in California, and I don't know if this person's in California or not, but there's a thing called cross enrollment. And basically, if you take certain number of classes at a community college, you can take one class at a CSU or a UC that's close to it. So for example, City College San Francisco, you could take a cross enrollment course at either San Francisco State or UC Berkeley. And one of the cool things is you pay the exact same fee as you would, it's $46 at community college instead of the 600 and something at Berkeley or the 400 and something, and you don't pay any other extra fees. So basically, they have these cross enrollments that you could do that. Some of them have like requirements like you need to complete 12 units or whatever, but you could always petition and do that, and you're not paying this fee, and you're taking a course at a UC or CSU. I don't know if this person's in California or not, but this is also another option that's out there for a lot of people that they don't know about, that you could actually do an upper division course at the same rate as a community college student, and it will show on your transcript as a course taken there, and you'll have that transcript.
I have a question for you, Agasia, about we've spoken a bit about being prepared when you're meeting with your counselor. Do you think you could cover some of the steps that students can take to be prepared, if that's, coming with your transcript or having a list of questions?
Well, yes, we just listed two of those things. Sometimes I would say definitely come with a list of questions. That's first and foremost, just to guide us on what you're interested in talking about for that particular visit. Sometimes you might come with just specifically something in mind, or maybe there's something going on, you know, academically. I know sometimes we also would see students that were probably either borderline in trouble, not in trouble, but you know what I mean, like you're getting into a place where you don't want to go. We also have to make a plan on how to get you back on track. So there's that. But there's nothing wrong with bringing in your questions, nothing wrong with bringing in transcripts, especially if you were a transfer student, at bringing in your courses. Sometimes advisors are actually there to help guide you through a process of, what am I trying to say? An appeal. You didn't know that part. There's been times where I've actually helped students, appeal a course and actually get it to count for something. Or maybe they said, hey, I really do think this particular course actually satisfies a prerequisite, and you can actually get that course to count for that. So don't ever, sell yourself short. If you really feel like you took a course that actually represents a course that you've already taken, you actually have that right to say, hey, I think this helps, and your advisor would help you with that process. That's another thing that a lot of students never really took advantage of that I wish more people would. I'm just remembering from my advising days, there was a major where it was literally a matter of filing a petition where they technically could have been a double major, and there was no specific requirements that were added. It was just a matter of adding one little note that you were picking up an extra major. But they didn't have to do any extra choices, and people graduated with 2 degrees because they actually inquired. So there's little things that you want to bring. I would say bring transcripts, bring, the schools that you're interested in, bring your questions. And then, if you're thinking about certain people that you're thinking about recommendations for, ask your, hey, is this a good person to, consider as a recommender? They can give you advice on that too.
Yeah, this is actually just in life. Like this is, is if you show up prepared to your advisor, like having like a folder or notebook and things with you, like they're gonna say this person is a serious person, and they're actually, and if they don't know something, they're gonna go the extra mile to get you answered, to do that. And so don't like there's like there's a whole quote about being prepared, which I forget it, but but also just those people, they're gonna say, okay, this is a serious person, and they will go that extra mile for you. But if you're, oh, I don't know, or what should I do, then they'll be like, okay, well, this person is not really serious, and it's a bias that everybody has, and
It is.
unfortunately, those are the things that it's really hard to break. You know, it's you're dealing with a human being, so
You're right. I wish we didn't have that bias, but I mean, when I do see someone who comes in prepared, yeah, it makes me want to go that extra mile for that student because they came and did the extra mile for me. So I do go out of my way to help someone in that manner. If you come in and I do see that you know, if I feel like you're not prepared, nobody, it's like, why are we giving it extra energy when I'm not sure, what you're gonna do with it? But you might get I hate to say it, generic, experience if you're just like, hey, I just want to know if this is the right course, and I'll probably just say yes, and keep going. But if you didn't have anything specific that you wanted to talk about, I don't know where to start. Keep in mind, a lot of advisors have, you know, we have set people that we have to see. Most of the time, we're probably seeing 15, 20 students in one day. And that's just appointments, So, we're not talking about the workshops that they may lead or anything else that they're doing outside of that. But, be your own. You have to advocate for yourself too. And I think a lot of people forget about that.
Um, the other thing is that this is a question that I have. How do you deal with advisors that seem to be going against you for things like, I don't know, their sexism and racism and all of those isms that are not okay, but it exist. I also have heard LGBT students get very different. So how would you recommend as a student, how would you deal with that? Or how do you overcome that?
Yeah, I've heard some of those stories as well. And again, that breaks my heart when I do hear those stories. I think I'm still going along with that. It's not, you don't have to necessarily just go to that particular advisor. There are other resources that you may be able to reach out to. I mentioned the advisor organization, NAAHP. If that's the case, I think you can definitely share that, yes, although you may have an advisor at your school, maybe your experience wasn't the greatest and you just were looking for other options. And that's okay, to share that. So find your allies. There's more than one resource that you should be able to depend on, but it's really just find your allies. And if you have to go outside, then you have to go outside. I'm one of those people, you always want to check in with the school, and hopefully you can come across other counselors that are similar to me in the space. And even though I'm in admissions, I have a heart. You can ask me a question, a generic question, and I'll answer you just because I know that, you probably couldn't get that answer somewhere else. So look for your allies is probably what I would say as your advice. And I am an ally, so there you go.
We have a question in the chat that I think you'll have a good answer to, but are there any upcoming open houses this year for prospective med students at KPSOM?
When you say open house, are you saying in person?
I think they mean virtual.
I know. I just wanted to tease. It has been quite an experience, even though I guess, are we saying we're officially out of the pandemic? I don't know, but things are still going on. I think maybe towards the end of the year, we are planning, possibly opening up to the public. Right now, we're not. And if we are doing that, and if we do have something, I would say always check our website, always check our Instagram. You have to follow us. Instagram is like probably the most active for our school. You would hear it there first. But yeah, until then, right now things are virtual, and I hate to say this, a lot of times it's mostly because of manpower. There's only two of us, two admission counselors at our school, so we're doing 50 million things trying to handle the inside stuff. But I know for me, I work with mostly our prospective applicants, so it's coordination. Thank you for that. Always check in with us. If we do something in person, I promise we will definitely put that out there. I think we're just scared, like what would be the interest there, and I think it would be a lot of interest.
Yeah, but come March 24th, you could ask any question from Dr. Jacoby Willis.
Yeah, I'll be back and I'll have a different hat on. Right now I'm thinking more advising, but then I'll be thinking just KPS on that day.
Yeah, this is another thing that I just want to share. You shared that. Cool. One of the things also why it's really important for you to talk to your instructors and advisors and those kind of folks. So I was taking a biology class, and my professor went to UCSF, and he's like, one of my roommates was a medical student, and I actually like helped him pass biochemistry in medical school. And you should get in touch with him. And come to find out, that person's actually an associate dean at a medical school. And I'm very vocal. Another one was my OChem professor. We're talking afterwards, we're cleaning up, and I've been talking to him like most of the few weeks of the semester. It's like, hey, my wife is an ER doctor, and if you ever like want to like talk to her or anything like that, which I get, these are just two examples. Now I work in the ER, know a lot of ER doctors. I'm like, oh, that's really cool, but I've got ER docs up the wazoo. But so they make themselves available. If you're out there talking to them, they get to know you, and your professors are a great resource. Certainly at a community college, they also, some of the speakers that we've had coming here, they've heard from their community college and they've reached out to us or connected as well. And so they may know students that graduated that are at medical school. They also went to school and they, or married to a doctor, or so these are like, the medical field is a very small community, and everybody knows each other. So yeah, and so everybody knows everybody, and they talk to each other, and they know each other, and so that's why like connecting with an advisor, either counselor, advisor, professor, is really important.
I will second that. Doctors aren't one-dimensional. They may be doctors, but they may have a whole host of different things that they're doing. Just thinking of my boss in general, not only is she, she's our dean of admissions, but she also is over our equity, inclusion, diversity department. So that's two. She's a working pediatrician. She still practices in that space. And then, she's also on so many different boards and things. So you never know, just speaking to someone who they might be connected to. So yeah, I agree with that. Just ask your professors. They actually might be doing way more than you think they are, who they may be connected to. Even me, I have many different things that I do. You would never know unless I told you that I also teach part-time, at my alma mater of Mount St. Mary's. And this is the other reason why I still stay in contact with pre-health students, because most of the students I have are pre-health students. So I'm still technically advising, but sometimes I'm doing it from a faculty perspective. I also I do this. I like to volunteer my time and just talk to just prospective students. And of course, what I do for a living, I do admissions for a living. But yeah, there's lots of ways that you can connect with me, so you have to think of everybody as not one-dimensional.
I just have a question about, we've had a lot of students that come to our events that have kind of switched gears and started pursuing medicine later in life. Do you think that students that had a career change are at a disadvantage compared to students that went straight through four-year universities?
Oh, no, not at all. Actually, some of us, we call them our non-traditional students. Those are my favorite students. You have so much experience that you could talk about and that you can lend to, a cohort, hopefully that, you're trying to get into. We don't want just, all the students that just came from straight out of college. We want to have people with different perspectives and different experiences, because that's what's going to make you a good doctor, that you all have these different ideas that you can share together and learn from. So yeah, I love, for one, it's just fascinating when I see someone who's like, switched from like electrical engineering and now they're, want to be a physician. I just need to know like what changed your mind, because it's usually something pretty amazing. But it's just really nice to see, someone talking from a different, perspective and what they could lend to that conversation or lend to, your experience. So that does not put you at an F. If anything, might actually put you over, the edge in competitiveness. I know we're dwindling down in time, but please ask any questions. That's what I'm here for. And I don't know if I've already done that yet, but I'm just going to put this in the chat too. You can always reach out to me at this email address, mdadmissions@kp.org. If you just have questions, it doesn't have to be about KP. Just make sure you just address it to me. My colleague also will, address it if it's something specific to me, but we are both, similar. Her name's Marissa Torres, so that's the other counselor at our school. I think because of what we used to do, we brought that over to Kaiser, so we have that counseling function to us, but we're just there for students, and that's what we like, which is probably why, heads up, if you're ever in that space, we actually do some counseling, very limited, after an application cycle has ended. And especially if you're thinking about reapplying, ask those schools if they do have those types of services. Some schools offer that, and take advantage of that if you do have that opportunity. Hint, hint, KPSM has that opportunity. But like I said, take advantage of those opportunities, because that could be very helpful to you too.
That is very kind of you to share your contact information with us and with the attendees here, especially when you're so busy. So we really appreciate that and your willingness to be in the corner of all the students. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. I get it. I started off at a community college for what most people don't know that. So I definitely understand the experience. I understand the transfer experience, and then becoming a transfer counselor, I know the other side of it. So I think I've seen every aspect and I lived it. So this is probably like the service and the apps and resource that I wish I had back in the day, but I'm glad that I could be, somebody that's there for someone now.
One of the other questions, and we get this quite a bit, what would you recommend for a reapplicant, and what are some of the advice that you would give, like generic advice to, are they at a disadvantage? What steps should they take? Any of that, and I know this is a generic thing, so everybody's different.
It's okay. I mean, I do, we go a little bit deeper in the application, especially if they reapply to our school, that I could see certain things in the application. But generic wise, I would definitely say you're going to need to do a reflection. What did I do, different from the last time I applied to that program? Because that's what the schools are going to be looking for. What did you do differently? If you just applied again and you didn't change anything, you're probably going to end up with the same results. So we need to know, you need to reflect on what was going on in the application. Maybe you didn't address why you wanted to be a physician. I know you may say that, but sometimes you may get so far into a story about why you're interested, but then you didn't tell us, like, what do you plan to do, when you become a physician? What are your dreams and passions, and what do you hope to see for the future? They want to see and hear all of that. So sometimes it could be, something that you were lacking in your personal statement. Sometimes you just weren't very clear in your secondary application, and usually secondary applications are they're essays, but they're going to be pertaining, or they're really trying to tap into that mission and vision that I was talking about earlier. A lot of your secondary questions are going to be connected to the mission and vision of that school. If you didn't make yourself very clear there, you're missing the whole entire point of how are you mission fit for our school. So you really have to pay attention to those questions and make sure you're answering those. People that interview, if you get to the point where you got an interview, first of all, you did very good. That means you did good in your application, but now you got to show it, in person or in the interview space. And there are people that are amazing, and I see this all the time. You come in, you're great on paper, and then you freeze. That's okay. I get there's nerves, but you also, they're looking at that. You got to prepare yourself for that. A lot of programs, advising offices, career services offices have mock interviews. Take those mock interviews. Not everybody is a great interviewee, but they can give you pointers on, how to interview and how to make yourself come across as a good candidate. Sometimes people share way too much in an interview. There's certain things that you don't have to say, in an interview. So you want to be mindful of that. And there are certain things that people just miss cues on, social cues. You have to remain professional at all times. Even if it's virtual, let's say a lot of schools are still doing virtual interviews, showing up, to a virtual interview late is still seen as you're late. And people are noting that. People are noting if you're addressing them as sir or ma'am or doctor or miss. If you're calling them by their first name and they didn't share that you could do that, they're dinging you for that. So you have to be mindful of those things. All of these things we talk about when I start talking to people that are reapplying, but I go over everything that let's see what we missed and try to figure out how we can make that better or change that. And no, I don't tell people to rewrite their whole personal statement unless it was just bad. That's usually never the case.
Yeah, Albert Einstein has a quote that says, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is called insanity. So
he's right.
Yeah, if you're a reapplicant, make sure you talk to someone, some of this, like Miss Lanier explained, is that some schools don't, just because they don't have the staff, and some students, and some schools don't have the staff to provide that service, but some other schools do, and make sure you take that on, because there are, like, it's just kind of like the whole thing of your essay. Somebody looking over your essay, like, they will look at it, will give you good feedback. It may not be positive, but it's at least good feedback, so that obviously you want to get you want to take that advantage.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? I know we only have like 2 minutes left. And thank you again for having me in this space. This is like one of my favorite things to do is connecting with students.
This is another question I have. What kind of recommendation would you give to some folks that go shopping for advice? Like, how would you address that? People that go to different advisors to hear what they really want to hear.
Oh, meaning you're kind of bouncing around. I do get that question. I've heard advice and everybody's telling me different things. I usually say, what I say to that is, that's possible, because every school is going to have different requirements and different things that they are referring to. So that may be the case. Now, if it's about, for example, your personal statement, and you're just not really taking that constructive feedback very well, it's okay to have multiple people read it, but at some point you do have to make that reflect on yourself too, and see, am I missing anything? If you really don't think you are, then I mean, by all means, trust your instincts. But there, sometimes it could be something that you're missing. You just may not want to hear it, and that could be hard. But I would just say, also go into that process with an open mind. You can't be closed-minded in that, especially if you're asking someone for their advice. And you'll know if you're connecting with somebody who really is just, I don't have the time, and they're just trying to kind of brush you off, or they really genuinely care about you. That's the person that you want to connect with. So I think you're going to get the right advice if you're connecting with the right people.
I know we're at the very end of the session, but we do have one last question in the Q&A.
Sure.
Somebody's wondering, how can med school applicants stay on top of their applications, especially since the requirements for each school is different?
I told you, you might have to be that type A person or pretend you are. This is where you want to put those multitasking skills into play. And for me, I would say get yourself a spreadsheet. Every school that you're applying to, you want to keep track of the school, keep track of their deadline dates, keep track of their requirements, keep track of when you received a confirmation from them saying that you completed their application. At the end of the day, the process is on the applicant. You have to follow these things. Not every school is going to be friendly and give you reminders and things like that, because there's a lot of applicants that have to tend to. But at the end of the day, you have to be your biggest advocate too. So me personally, I would say keep track, use a spreadsheet and track everything for every school that you're interested in. You're going to do that. Yes, I was going to mention MSAR too. MSAR is the greatest. Man, if I had this as a student younger back in the day, I tried to be a nurse, but that was a whole long time ago. Whole nother story for another day. But use the MSAR. It is a great, resource to have.
Now, this is something that I'm going to put Madeline on the spot, who's in the application process. Can you say how you do it or what you've done?
What I think, just really briefly, I'm going to say quickly, I did use MSAR. I think I put that in the chat. Jubin will share it to everyone, but this just has all of the requirements for each school. So just before I sent to I made a list of the schools I was interested in, and then I looked on the MSAR to see if I had everything I needed to apply to them. There were some that I didn't, especially as a transfer student. Some schools don't accept community college credits, and it was really important that I was aware of that. So yeah, just go through it and make sure that you have, you can check all of the boxes for the schools before you spend your money on applying to them and sending secondaries in. It can be a lot. So
sounding like somebody going through the experience or have gone through.
I did also want to just throw in really quickly, earlier we were speaking about community college credits not transferring to your university. I do want to say, as somebody who has been through that, I had my community college classes, not all of those transferred to my four-year university, but when I was applying to medical school, I did list all of my classes, both in community college and in university. So even though my sociology class I took my freshman year at CC didn't transfer to my four-year, I was able to put that on my record for medical school. So I just wanted to put that out to everyone who might be concerned about that.
And you are correct. And we see everything in the application from all your schools that you've attended. So that is right.
All righty.
All right.
We're not going to keep you any longer because it is a Saturday, and we really appreciate you making it to us and being insightful. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you for
on
having
a Saturday
me.
morning. Really appreciate it.
No problem. I can't wait. I can't wait to see people on the 24th. If you are interested in Kaiser Permanente Bernard J. Tyson School of Medicine, join us for our next event on the 24th. We would love to see you.
All right. Thank you. And
Thank
have
you.
a great weekend.